It's a great privilege to be here. Blank, I certainly have appreciated the correspondence that we've had and your reaching out to me, and you're a great citizen and a really wonderful adornment of our community, and it means a lot to me to have the Virginia Holocaust Museum and the Virginia Law Foundation offer me this wonderful award. And I appreciate all of you who have come today. And Chief Justice Lemons, you're a former student of mine. I have a special place of affection for you and proud of what you've done. And I think your emphasis on civility is quite well taken, and I would say today that I'm so appreciative that so many of my colleagues from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals are here today, because I can tell you, you're going to read daily about the acrimony that characterizes the functioning of government. And civility doesn't make much news. That's one of the problems we have, is that the fact that people are actually getting along and practicing civility doesn't attract much media attention. But that doesn't mean it's not occurring. And I really today want to take my hat off to our marvelous Chief Judge Roger Gregory and my great colleagues on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals for the fact that although we disagree from time to time, we agree on a great deal, we talk things through, we try to find consensus, we keep the public interest in heart. And I think if the public could see the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in action and functioning, it would be a heartening lesson in a somewhat polarizing time. And chief among those lessons is that the rule of law cannot stand alone. Historical memory, such as those around us today, is necessary to preserve that bedrock feature of any justice society, a government of laws and not of men. It always bears remembrance that the story of Nazi Germany is the story of the rule of law trampled underfoot. As early as 1933, the Third Reich had indoctrinated lawyers, dismissed Jewish judges, and demanded oaths of obedience from those jurists who remained. Dissatisfied with legacy Weimar courts, the Nazis created a separate judiciary to try political cases, and they packed that judiciary with party loyalists. Courts are supposed to be instruments of justice. The Nazis perverted them to be instruments of discrimination and ultimately of death. Germany's beholden courts sentenced thousands to execution, and they subjected countless more to sweeping anti-Semitic laws. By November of 1938, Hitler's regime had dropped all pretense that it followed any law but its own barbarous creed. Kristallnacht, the Night of Crystal, was named for the broken glass littering Germany's streets after state-sponsored thugs destroyed Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues. Police rounded up some 30,000 men, not for any crime, but for their ancestry. What was left of the rule of law had been shattered, and from those pieces, the horrors of the Holocaust took shape. Remembering these lawless acts reminds us that the rule of law and the independent courts that it depends upon must always operate as a restraining force for the worst excesses of society. As Justice Robert Jackson put it in his opening statement in Nuremberg, some wrongs are, quote, so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated. Due process Equal treatment and free speech are vital to the identification of such evils, but they are nothing more than paper promises without independent courts to enforce them. The historical memory represented in this museum counsels constant vigilance on this most seminal of issues. It helps guard us against smugness, for even the most enlightened countries have seen the rule of law disintegrate. The Weimar Republic arose in Germany as a reaction against the worst impulses of the First World War. The 1920s saw governmental reforms, scientific advancements, philosophical debates, and artistic creativity thrive there. But Hitler rose to power all the same. The importance of historical memory has not lessened this very day. A rising tide of social alienation can still lead those who suffer to look for scapegoats and to seize upon race or religion as criteria for persecution. A tableau of hatred has been on display in this freest of countries. It is impossible not to see the shoots of intimidation in mass gatherings across our great land. It is impossible not to hear some echoes of humanity's darkest hours. Free speech is our precious value, but values are not and must never be the vehicles of mindless violence. The question so often is, will the center hold? In America, it will, but only if law as an instrument of order and human dignity is observed. The foremost embodiment of the rule of law is our own Constitution, which recognizes that religious faith is both the greatest source of good on our planet and also harbors the greatest potential for division. If one were to single out any act of genius in our Constitution, it might be our two great religion causes, which emphasize the importance of the free exercise of religion and the dangers of government establishing any single faith. The drafting of those clauses was an act of exquisite balance, and the strife in England between Catholics and Protestants made the framers aware of its imperatives. History also warns us that no nation is immune, and we Americans know that all too well. The evil of slavery festered in the very same country that proclaimed every man created equal. Of course, slavery and the Holocaust were not identical tragedies. Slavery lasted longer than the Third Reich. Nazi Germany attempted not just the subjugation of a people, but outright extermination of them. Each was its own inimitable horror, its own stain upon our planet's aspiration to call itself civilized. But remembering them helps us to understand that our highest ideals, our highest proclaimed ideals, cannot prevent atrocities without the rule of law. Law is the great sentinel that guards our free society. To repeat, the rule of law doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the faith and deeds and aspirations of good people. Historical memory shows us not only the evils of persecution, but the ability of religious faith to rise above it. Great figures of faith, the prophet Isaiah, Jesus of Nazareth, imbue mankind with hope even in the darkest periods. Great works of art, Verdi's wonderful opera Nabucco comes to mind, immortalized faith's perseverance amidst despair. And though the Holocaust immeasurably hurt and scarred its victim, many resisted the bitterness that so often accompanies the deepest of tragedies. My friend Henry Abraham, a political science professor at the University of Virginia, fled Germany when he was a boy. He lost 16 close family members to the concentration camps. 16. And yet he came to America as a teenager, and he lived a life, and he has lived a life in America of exceptional accomplishment and unfailing generosity. For Henry, historical memory is personal, but it can also be personal for the rest of us, for you and I. And I will never forget the kindness of Rabbi Jack Spiro and the entire congregation of Beth Ahava, who took in members of my family's church, St. James, after lightning started a fire that destroyed much of our church. The St. James congregation held Sunday services in the synagogue until our church could be repaired. My family celebrated the Christmas season in a synagogue complete with the poinsettias that so often adorn that time of year. And every year since, members of those two wonderful congregations have gathered for interfaith dialogue and reflection. Out of tragedy can come great home. Thomas Paine once wrote that as in absolute governments the king is law, so in free countries the law ought to be king. In order to ensure that the reign of law continues, we must never forget the dark horror that was the Holocaust. Never might we one distant day hope to listen to each other with tenderness and gratitude. I thank those of you here for your important work in that endeavor, and I thank you too for the great honor of this award.
Thank you. So we don't have to wait for Uncle Henry. We got the award. So Judge Wilkinson, thank you very much for such an inspirational speech. Congratulations on being the Rule of Law Award winner for 2017. Chief Justice Lemons, thank you. And I hope you all know that you've heard two wonderful speeches. I hope you've been inspired as I have. And I hope you'll come back to the museum and support both the Holocaust Museum and the and the Law Foundation, and whatever other opportunities you have to support the rule of law and to continue and impose civility in the practice of law. So thank you very much for being here. Those of you who want to tour the museum, we've got Charlie sitting up back there somewhere, and maybe some others. It's a wonderful opportunity to see the museum, especially the Nuremberg courtroom exhibit. So please take advantage of it. And thank you very much for being here.